Hey class, so we just finished Activity 5, the Tragedy of the Commons, and I just wanted to give you a quick review of what we looked at. So here we go. So continuing in our unit in Ecology, Activity 5, Tragedy of the Commons, remember this is the idea that if there's a common resource, maybe something in our communities that we utilize, that as humans, without any kind of regulation or rules, we tend to overuse and destroy that resource. So that was the challenge question we were trying to look at, is how can the overuse of an ecosystem service be prevented? How can we manage that use in some way to make it more sustainable? So these were the kinds of questions we were asking ourselves as we were playing through the game model. How would a limit affect our behavior? Does it affect what happens in the lake or in the fishing grounds? We had to consider how each person within our group did, so it's not, at some point we can't just think about ourselves, but we have to think about others, make sure that they're getting the resources they need. What is the condition of the community? And then what is the condition of the lake? Are there fish left, and will there be enough for future fishing in future generations? And ultimately, is it sustainable? And not just in one area, not just in the fish or not just in the economy, but in all areas as we consider it, would we call it sustainable? So I just want to give you some example data. The data you collected might look a little bit different, or if you didn't get a chance to play the game, this will give you an idea of what we were hoping to see out of it. So in Game A, there was no fishing limit. We were able to catch as many of both types of fish as we wanted, and ultimately what we see is we made quite a bit of money up front, but we also depleted the fish supply, and ultimately there were no fish left after a couple of rounds. So we said, well, what if we try to put on some kind of limit? So in this case, you could catch 3 of each type of fish per round, and again, same result. So showing this limit is probably too high. So then in Game C, we said, let's try to tighten our limits even more. For this one, they said you could get 3 of the orange, but none of the yellow. So now we're not even sort of touching the yellowfish population. And ultimately, we see big numbers of the fish survive through. So if we totaled this up, this would be something like 155. Over here, we're looking at into the high 30s to 40. So the fish are doing well. They're continuing on. The population is growing. But very little money is being made. And so potentially that's a sustainable system, as long as this would be enough economic resources. But we said, what if we wanted to try to maintain that sustainability in terms of the fish populations, but also try to improve the economic outcome? Could we adjust the limits a little bit to make that more possible? And so we, depending on what your group decided to do, we tried some different strategies. The most successful strategies seemed to focus somewhere around here, where you could catch, maybe up to 3 of the orange and 1 of the yellow. So that would allow the yellow to continue on for at least a few rounds before, in this case, ultimately going extinct. Other groups tried some different strategies where maybe they would limit the number of yellow for the community, so they do a certain number of tags, or some rolling limits, some things to try to allow that population to grow first before allowing it to be fished. And again, this practice seemed to sort of reach a bit more sustainability in terms of economics. Those prices started to go down as one of the populations went extinct. But ultimately, we could adjust these numbers and try to come up with a strategy that makes sure we are seeing sustainability in the fish populations and also providing the resources people need. So just one more quick summary slide for you, what I just said. So the first couple rounds, ultimately, no limits or too high limits, don't maintain the resource well, and with smart management, we can ultimately manage our resources. So how did this model the idea of the tragedy of the commons? Showed us that without limits, humans overuse a resource, but it can be managed smartly. And then as some sort of closing thoughts, I'd like you to think about what are some commons in our own community, and how can we best manage these ecosystem resources, these ecosystem services. So here's our vocab. Make sure you have solid definitions for these in your science journals. And I hope this was a fun activity for you. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll see you next time in class.